Look for the premiere of the movie Batman and Jesus, produced in collaboration with King's Tower Productions as part of Myth Information Conference 4 on September 30th, 2017. In audience for the Batman and Jesus movie premiere include Seth Andrews, creator and host of The Thinking Atheist, atheist celebrity Aaron Ra, Mythicist scholar Dr. Richard Carrier, Naked Mormonism podcast creator and host Bryce Blankenagel, CEO of Atheist Republic Allie Jackson, and a slew of other guests. The Myth Information Conference will include the very exciting buzzed belief debate titled Islam in the Age of Trump between Asra Nomani and Faisal Saeed al-Mutar that will be moderated by Matt Dillahunty. The conference will also include a lineup of speakers such as London-based YouTube juggernaut Sargon of Akkad, also YouTube sensations Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head, and Global Humanist Secular Movement editor Melissa Chen. We will also be hosting a special VIP party where VIP ticket holders will be privy to a private presentation by Ron Miscavige, father of David Miscavige, the leader of Scientology, on his experience with Scientology during and after his escape. To learn more or to purchase tickets for Myth Information Conference 4, visit us at mythicistmilwaukee.com. Now, back to the show.
Okay, welcome everyone to Myth Informed with your hosts, Brian and Dimitri. Today on the show, we're chatting with a fabulous individual, Natalie, who's best known for the Science Enthusiast Podcast, or should I say phenomena, since there's a Facebook page, merch, and a powerful internet presence overall. Natalie's a psych grad who currently runs both the Science Moms and Romantic Nihilist Facebook pages. Welcome, Natalie.
Hello, thank you for that wonderful introduction. That was fantastic, and I'm sorry if I disappoint everybody from here on out, but because that was really a great intro.
Not possible. We're already too excited.
Right. I really don't think so, because I've been listening to a lot of the Science Enthusiast Podcast recently. And Natalie, I know we have definitely one thing in common, and that's that we've both been recently called lots of nasty expletives by both ends of the political spectrum. And
because you can't make anybody happy.
Right. So I wanted to, in solidarity, say, I just want to say that sucks, and I feel your pain.
Hey,
did you guys do an episode on Nazi punching too, or is that
we didn't?
Us? Yeah, we did.
I mean, we kind of bring it up in every podcast, essentially, so.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that is very 2017, it feels like, and will not go away.
Right.
It will not go away,
and
ever.
When it feels like it should be very 1947, but for some reason it's...
But it's really surged. It really has. And Dan and I have to say that Dan, who I do the podcast with, who unfortunately could not be here tonight because he has no voice and would not be good to try to speak on a podcast today, unfortunately. He bore the brunt of the criticism, I think, for a lot of the kind of Nazi punching stuff, which I will say we did kind of take the stance of let's not punch people.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because let's not punch people. I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I tell them not to hit each other, and I tell them not to hit their friends. And I know this is a very simplistic way to look at it, but
it's not simplistic. I mean, it's a grown-up friggin' viewpoint.
Yes.
I mean, my thing is I want to be the kind of person that I want my children to be, in a sense, and I don't want to advocate for something that I wouldn't want them to do.
It's a really good point. And we'll definitely we'll kind of shelve that for now and get back to it later, because it's a really good segue, because you actually have a Science Moms Facebook account. And I saw a trailer for a documentary that you're directing or producing coming up. I don't know, has that been out yet? I watched the trailer.
No,
it looks cool.
So it will premiere next month at QED. The conference, the Skeptics Science Conference in Manchester in the UK. So that will be the first time that it is shown in front of an audience. And I've been working on it for the past nearly 2 years ago. I came up with the idea and then had it shot and edited, and it was funded by Kickstarter, because clearly there's a market for something that tackles issues of food and parenting and medicine from a science and evidence-based standpoint instead of all of the Gwyneth Paltrow type of woo stuff that's out there. So yeah, I'm really excited to have it shown in front of an audience for the first time. So it's just a month away. It
focuses on like 4 different science moms, right? I think Allison, who sometimes is either a special guest or a co-host on the Science Enthusiast, is in there too, right?
No. So Alice, our friend Alice is our sort of executive producer of the Science Enthusiast podcast. But she is not one of the science moms. There is someone named Allison, Allison Bernstein, who is a neuroscientist. She's in the film. And then there's Layla and Anastasia, who are also scientists. There's Coven Synapathy, who's a science communicator, and Jenny Splitter, who is a journalist who writes about a lot of food and health and parenting issues. So it's these 5 women that are featured in the film. It's an interview-based film where we just try to debunk some of the myths around things like GMOs and vaccines and alternative medicine, and just present sort of the anti-fear narrative, because there's a lot of fear surrounding these issues with parents. So
much so that didn't you say that you were called a fake mom at one point?
Yeah. So Coven, she has this interesting story that she talks about in the film where people came up with these really weird conspiracy theories about her as this science communicator who's writing essentially in favor of things like biotechnology. There were conspiracy theories saying that she was sort of this fake mom with a fake name given to her by, say, some PR company
Monsanto.
or something. By Monsanto, because it was so unbelievable to people that there could be people who are parents who are saying GMOs are safe. And so
that's insane.
It's absolutely insane. And I mean, some of the hateful messages that get spewed towards people who are advocating for science are just vile. Mm-hmm. And so I think all of these women, to one extent or another, have experienced, some pushback for just advocating for science and reason. And I mean, I know I've experienced a little bit of it, but it's sort of laughable. The conspiracy theories around the movie are just that it was funded by, I don't know, big biotech or something. And it's all, I don't know, the creation again of a like PR company. And I'm thinking, no, this movie was edited, by someone in the basement of his house. And it was, we Kickstartered $10,000. This is not big shill bucks here.
This is big budget production here.
Big shill bucks.
This is not. No, I mean the briefcase of money from Monsanto has not arrived from me yet. So, I mean, I don't know when that's coming, but I'll let you know.
But hey, Natalie, now that they're accusing you of this, why not? Be like, hey.
And so this is the thing, though, that if the movie was funded by some biotech company or something, I would have just disclosed that, because I'm not afraid of science, evidence-based science. And if a company had given me money for a movie, I'd be like, yeah, this company gave me money for the movie.
Yep. And
it's not that complicated.
And that's true in all scientific talks in the medical industry. If a physician is giving a presentation on whatever surgical procedure, he has to disclose if he's being paid by certain industry device companies and so on and so forth, in order to say, well, you might have a stake in it or you might not. And that's fair.
And
conflict of interest. That's it.
In your, when you cover that topic, do you by chance talk in the movie about the fact that there's a distinction between GMOs as a conversation topic, as a category, and a company like Monsanto, who's very profit driven, who potentially puts local farmers out of business? I mean, there are negative aspects of that particular organization. So do you by chance make a distinction?
There's a little bit in there where I think it's Layla who brings up the fact that biotechnology is not it's not just a corporate thing. Yes, like if you want to criticize corporations or, big business, that's another discussion. But the science and the process is another discussion. And so, you can criticize large companies while still saying, yeah, I want to see science do things that can help the planet, feed people, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, there is a distinction between the two. And yes.
I think Dan was quoted as saying in his bio, like the goal of Science Enthusiast is to increase critical thinking and to make science less scary when you understand it. And I think the corollary there is like, when you understand science, it makes investigation into the unknown less scary. And I think specifically into the anti-vaxxer, anti-GMO, like if you don't have an understanding in science and you do have kind of this fear of authority or big corporations, you can almost understand the fear.
Yeah, and it makes sense because people do fear things that they don't know about. And then when the sort of anti-science, more conspiracy-driven side is, I feel like they're really compelling in the stories that they try to tell because fear kind of sells and drives people and drives their emotions. So science, I think, I don't know, one of the goals of science at this point and science communicators is, I think, should be to, make it more accessible to people.
Yeah. And
help people sort of develop their own critical thinking toolbox so that they can spot the bullshit a little more easily, kind of spot the bullshit through the, like David Avocado Wolf type of memes that sell this either fear or the fact that nature can cure everything, whatever it is. The science side of things needs to be able to give people the tools to spot the crazy.
Although, in today's day and age, based on some people's politics, really any idea could be perceived as accurate. If we do this egalitarianism of ideas, someone could make the argument that even anti-vaxxers deserve their opinion and everyone's right and they can do whatever they want. And that's the scary thing is, we're almost reverting back on ourselves with this whole equality of idea concept. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Anti-vaxxers, that's a great example because here's an example of something that it's not an evidence-based way of thinking, but it's also a way of thinking that can have a truly negative effect on like public health. It's a dangerous way of thinking if people want to go the anti-vax route. And so to give credence to that sort of idea, it can have dangerous consequences to a larger society. So it is tricky because what's that line of, respecting people's ideas to what extent, and because I know the anti-vax thing, that's actually a really good example because how much weight and respect should you give to those ideas?
Yeah, I don't know if we have to give respect to ideas specifically, but we do have to give respect to the people who hold them. So you can say, look, I respect you. I get that even if you're talking to a conspiracy theorist, you can say, I respect you as a person. I think your ideas are silly though. And here, can we have a conversation? And if you approach that person respectfully, maybe that's how you dismantle the idea or at least pull on one string.
Well, and I think for me, because I've had to have some of these conversations with other parents, it's just kind of come up, especially as they find out that I'm making a film about some of these topics, like the food and vaccine topics, where I think in the past, I might have felt a little bit more dismissive even of the people first, if they were coming to me with anti-vax or anti-science type of ideas. But I've been trying to be a lot more patient with the people because you have to, I think, try to forge a little bit of a connection, whether it's parent to parent or just find a little common ground where you can have a conversation. And whether minds are changed or not, it's having the respectful conversation at least goes a little bit of a way in just being a person. And actually, I did have a good experience recently where a mom came to me and said she was on the fence about vaccinating. And the next time I saw her, she said she got her child the flu shot.
Wow.
That's awesome.
So that was kind of a cool moment. So it happens.
Hearts and minds.
It does. We see that in atheism too, right? After 2 years, I've been listening to you in secret for 2 years. I used to not like you so much, but you have a few good points. you led me down a path, right? It happens. True. And that's the good way. And you probably didn't insult that person and, pound on, their character so much as some of the ideas they held.
No, and this mom, super nice woman, just, met her at a school function, and she asked me what I did. And I'm like, well, and it's hard because I never know do I just lead right in with I'm pretty pro GMO and pro vaccine, and I do this podcast and I'm an atheist and all this stuff. But now I just kind of lay it all out because why the hell not, I guess. And she seemed relieved that I put it all out there. So she was able to ask me a question. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I think those little conversations add up too. Right. And, any, not necessarily even a mind changed, but a mind like affected in some way to where you plant a seed where they think for themselves and maybe explore something they wouldn't have otherwise explored.
Yeah. I think the key there is conversation. It seems like it's getting maybe a little harder to discuss, frankly, anything without, I would say, potentially people getting offended. I mean, we talked about anti-vaxxing, and that seems like it should be a no-brainer, but it's not. You can take obesity as another great example because there are, I understand that there's concepts like, body shaming or whatever it is, but, it is factual that obesity is not good for your health. And so when you turn that into, well, you're just making fun of me, no, you care about someone's health. The number one cause of mortality in the U.S. is heart disease, and that is directly driven by, obesity. So that was just one example, but Brian and I are all about dialogue and debate, and we don't agree on a lot of topics, but we still love to hash it out. So it's just, it's kind of sad to see that there's not as much discourse going on.
Do you think that it has to do at all with the fact that on the internet, people can just kind of hide behind whatever their online persona is and just type everything out and let it hang there? And I don't know. Yeah. People aren't actually talking to each other. There's a lot of keyboard warriors right now, I think.
Yeah. I've said we've got to look at each other as human beings and not avatars of ideology. And that's, right? I think, so you're seeing on Twitter, right? It's anonymous even. Heck, you don't even have to link it to your Facebook.
Brian, that's a t-shirt right there. Go to town. Yeah. Make that.
Well, don't let me do the art, for Christ's sake. So if someone wants to do the art on that, I'll make it.
But it's true. You are sometimes just arguing. Oh my gosh, there was one day, I think it was a few weeks ago, somebody who just had an avatar of a teapot was arguing with me. And it's like,
were they a tea partier?
No, I don't even know what they were, but it's for a moment, I'm just thinking, this is my life right now. A teapot just blocked me on Twitter. This is where I am. And but this is where we are, though.
That's a Tuesday, Natalie. That's a Tuesday.
That's just a day in any of our lives. Is you get blocked by a kitchen item on Twitter. That's life. But I think people can easily hide behind whoever they've crafted themselves to be on the internet.
But I think that's why there's a lot of diversity out there in who makes content. I mean, we put content out there. You do. Pretty much everyone who we talk to has content that they put out there. So in the grand scheme of things, in the ether, there's a ton of either educational material or people chatting. And so that's why we put a lot of credence into talking with people who we agree with, who we disagree with, and, trying to ask some poignant questions from time to time.
Is that what you're trying to do with your conference too? Putting a whole bunch of ideas?
Yeah. You couldn't have said it better, Natalie.
Yeah.
Right.
See, we both have podcasts, so we're going to just interview each other. This counts as like both shows. But is that kind of the goal? Because I was looking at the lineup that you have.
Yeah. And it's definitely the goal. And the goal really was to get people that are still within the political mainstream, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe, we can go anywhere inside of there. But be able to present a balanced view on that. And it seemed to me, what are people talking about? When I would talk in the atheist community, it seems like these discussions were popping up all the time. And, the debate about God was being eschewed for one about social justice. Mm-hmm. And I've always loved the atheist community and the fact that when we do talk about religion, right? Religion and politics are the things you're not supposed to discuss. But the atheist community has done so well in talking about religion sensibly. We kind of calm down when you approach a religious person. We kind of know how to do it. And I've always loved that. I feel like I'm good at that. I can talk religion at bars. But man, politics, kaboom. Why can't we refocus that skill that we had in talking about religion and talk about some of the more they're more cultural politics than anything. So that's what we want to do. Can we talk about these cultural politics? So it's an experiment to try to do that in a sane way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the fringe does get clicks. So there's a reason why people who are out there who are ostentatious, maybe like a firebrand, maybe they're doing that for attention. And maybe we're just trying to be a little more boring by, I don't know.
I think
by
that
being centrist.
Where you noted something, Natalie, the culture of fear. I mean, you specifically meant anti-vaxxers and such, but I think there's a climate of fear on both ends of the political spectrum. It's, oh my God, there's Nazis running around for real. Oh my God, there are anarcho-communists running around for real. And you can see which side is wigging out about which side. I think both of these are a small group, but they produce an inordinate amount of fear on both sides. And that's stifling to dialogue.
And then with that fear comes responses that maybe don't seem like the best long-term responses, kind of burning everything to the ground on one side. And then it's like, what happens after that?
Yeah. And you take like center-right conservatives or center-left liberals, then, don't throwing in with like the respective extremes left and right. And to me, I think the center left liberals and the center right conservatives have way more in common with each other than either do with the respective extreme. Mm-hmm. So like let's have that conversation without saying, I saw you liked somebody who liked Antifa. Like that will happen.
And then guilty by association.
Yes.
By several degrees of association, but still people are kind of unfriending and unfollowing each other on social media just because of associations too, which just seems like kind of a fucked way to do it. That's not how you have relationships with people.
Instead of 3 hops to get to Kevin Bacon, it's 3 hops to get to a Nazi.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Or a Stalinist. Yeah, seriously. I mean, Tim Pool covered the Boston rally, and he was going back and forth to both sides, and he was telling the other side, look, this is what they're saying about you. This is what they're saying. And both sides were like, well, no, we're not that. We're not that. Mm-hmm. And that's what they think. I mean, the discourse had all but stopped. They're yelling at each other with megaphones with 10 rows of police in there. I mean, that's not discourse.
And that's the opposite of exactly what we want. So and again, Natalie, thank you so much for bringing up the conference, because that is coming up very soon. That's September 30th. And topical. So we're going to have essentially 2 debates there that are going, actually more than 2. We're going to have a debate booth, for crying out loud.
It's just debates, just a day of debate. But you have some interesting debates there, like Thomas Smith and
Sargon.
Sargon.
Yeah, he's trending these days.
Yeah, we've gotten more shit for inviting Sargon. Well, he got lumped in with he was the accused Nazi that we invited in, and also Armored Skeptic and Shuan had all got labeled with some sort of rape apologist label or misogynist, you name it,
crazy.
Racist.
I've never seen so much turmoil over a YouTube person in my life.
Yeah. It seems like YouTube, like, because I'm sort of out of the YouTube sphere. Like, I don't really know who a lot of the YouTube personalities are, except I kind of started hearing about these people when I noticed that your conference was getting some backlash, shall we say.
Yeah. That's an okay word for it.
Yeah. That's an okay word. And I guess I think I understand where, on some level where the backlash was coming from, based on people who didn't agree with the ideas that they think are put forth by these people. But then at the same time, it's that thing of, well, if you don't agree with the ideas being put forth by people. I mean, you don't have to attend the conference.
Right. Or on the flip side, you could attend, and there's obviously a Q&A session. And
yes.
And the other thing is, I
like that idea. Show up and ask the questions.
Well, people thought that, first of all, they didn't read deeply into this. They saw a name, they got triggered, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not like we were giving someone a platform to just spew, hateful material. And frankly, I would even argue that the people in question don't have hateful material. But beyond that, this was a dialogue between someone who was, center left, center right, whatever you want to call it. But they're people from two diverging political positions. What better thing could you want? Oh no, let's just stifle that. Let's stifle all speech and let's just sit in our corners and just wait for the world to blow up. I don't understand what the alternative is.
Well, see, and for me somebody that I really respect and like the work he does is Thomas Smith. So for me, I'm thinking, okay, if there is this other person that perhaps has ideas that I might not lean towards myself, well, what a great person to have across from him talking about it.
Hell yeah.
Somebody who, so I was kind of thinking, well, this is a potentially really rad idea to have these like this particular person talking to him.
Yeah. And I think they're the same degree, if you want to call it right and left. I don't think that those things apply anymore, but I think they're the same far apart. So if one's a +5, the other's a -5. We don't have a +10 and a -1. I think that we tried hard to do that.
Throwing a lot of numbers at me, Brian.
Sorry.
we're doing math. It's it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm way past that time, but
but also the audience. When say Sargon's audience, well, they're just mini Sargons, right? They think exactly like him and don't have any disagreements at all. Thomas Smith people think exactly like him. They couldn't possibly think anything other like that. Your audience will get picked off, and it'd be interesting to meet those people who will probably have a lot more in common, no matter what side, if you will, you're on, than you'll have opposed.
And at the end of the day, that's one person there's like 15 other people coming to the conference to speak, to attend. I mean, the main event is a debate between Faisal and Asra.
Yeah,
they're not even.
I love Faisal. He's one of our buddies, mine and Dan's and Alice's, and he is somebody whose voice I think just needs to be heard as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We thought Islam in the Age of Trump we were worried that was too provocative of a title for that debate. And instead we get nailed.
But wait, that's not.
But wait, there's YouTube. So.
Right. And see, that's the thing. I went on YouTube to get out of my bubble. I sometimes get caught in a center-left, semi-libertarian bubble. So I want to get out of that. And I'll go and find, oh, wow, look at this guy named Contra Points. Wow, look at this guy over here named Sargon of Akkad. Let's check out Armored Skeptic and Shoe on Head and look at H Bomber Guy. Wow, there's a whole lot of people, and you want to listen to them all. And then I thought, yeah, let's get them together and debate. And some people didn't like that.
Brian spends a lot of time on YouTube.
I do.
Yeah.
Clearly. But Contra Points is another one of my favorite YouTubers. So anyone who's listening should check out Contra Points on YouTube. But I do, that's why I kind of wanted to ask you about, your thoughts for the conference, because I get where you're coming from, and I can appreciate wanting to have different sides together to discuss. But you're right about the audience too, getting people together who think that they probably have very differing viewpoints from each other. And maybe that some dialogue could happen, off stage among the attendees of your conference.
That's you. Yes, that we do want that.
Yeah.
And we also felt too, when I was vetting everybody, right? And I watched a lot of hours of video. We were picking
extreme vetting.
Extreme. Oh boy. I don't have orange hair. But anyways, I picked people that felt they wanted to talk to the other side. And that was a requirement of the people we expect, that they wanted to hear the other side. They wanted to reach out. They enjoy talking to people of differing opinions, because there's some that won't. There's some that don't want to debate, that don't want to talk to the other side. We don't want those. We want speakers that do, but then we're also encouraging our audience to do this, to be those same people. That's why we have the Skeptics Peace Pledge, set out there you're not ready to argue with someone unless you can explain their argument in a way they would agree. Now go ahead and do it. Recognize we have emotions and try not to let them control us.
And that's incredibly challenging. Depends on the topic. Because I was at a bar once, and a buddy of mine and I we were essentially show debating poaching, and I somehow had the pro poaching stance. And
how'd you end up with that?
I think we flipped a coin,
straw.
but it was really not. It was bad. I don't even remember what I came up with. But the point is that you can debate about anything, as bad as it is. But then you kind of look like a jackass sometimes.
Yeah, too many mojitos. So.
Well, then everybody sort of has their sacred cow thing that's really near and dear to them, and these deeply held beliefs, and you have to know or try to read this, like, the scene as best as possible to know when it could be going too far with somebody, and trying to, even though the ideas can be really out there, maybe, like I had a friend who did a podcast where he talked to a Sandy Hook truther.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay. So, and you can hear it when you listen to his podcast, him getting clearly upset.
Irate.
Because how I know I could never probably talk to a Sandy Hook truther, because I'd just be like, you are out of your fucking mind, and because I know that would probably bother me a lot. And I was able to hear my friend, he can hear it bothering him. But man, there are just certain things I think that everybody has that maybe aren't the best to really go hard on, because
it's like Holocaust denial. I mean, how do you can deny anything. You can deny what you had for lunch that day. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make it. And I don't know how you would. I mean, I couldn't do that interview either. That would be beyond the pale.
And I'm not interested in, bringing things in like flat earth or abject conspiracy theories like Pizzagate or Sandy Hook deniers, but things more in the political mainstream. And like the fact that Sargon, for example, in Armored and Shoe have such big audiences, that's a lot of people. And to me, that's not a fringe. There's a significant amount of people that think a certain way, and maybe we can get to is why. I mean, I've talked to folks that I really am opposed on a view. And if I back down and say, okay, look, I'm completely wrong on this. Maybe I'm just dumb and ignorant. Can you please explain to me why? And now I've let it free. No longer is this landmine there that they're going to run over and piss me off. And if I listen, I might be able to get to it, and some misconceptions could vanish. And they usually do.
And Natalie, on your podcast, but also on the Facebook channel, do you guys unpack some of these heavier political, themes, or is it a little more, I don't want to say like, entertainment based, maybe a little lighter? Not to say you can't get into those topics, but I didn't know if that's the audience that you typically go for.
I would say for us, one of our biggest goals is to platform people who have ideas that we value and want to put out into the world. And so like Faisal is a great example of somebody who we had on our show to talk about his experience and how he, views secular activism and all that kind of stuff. We've had people like Yasmin Mohammed come on and talk about her.
She was great. I really liked her.
Have you guys talked to her?
No, I listened to your podcast with her.
Oh yeah. And so I would say, some of the things that we talked about with her in terms of Islam and the idea of Islamophobia and that kind of stuff, it maybe could be slightly controversial to some people, but it's something that we wanted to put forth because she had a fantastic story to tell. Yeah. And she will always be, I think, one of my favorite interviews on the show.
It was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Because even for her, I was able to ask like a question about the hijab that I would have probably been really reluctant to ask in other situations, just when I was at the Women's March and confused as to why it seemed like it was being used as a sign of, I don't know,
liberation. Or empowerment.
Yeah. That had confused me, and I felt almost guilty for thinking that.
But that's okay. That's okay. And we have to give ourselves space to hold an opinion and then change if need be. Yeah.
And then to be able to ask Yasmin that question and talk about it, it, at least for me, was a moment of, okay, I can bring this up and talk about it and explain why I felt that way. Is that a privilege thing that I was afraid to bring that up?
No, I think it's just awkward. Am I allowed to talk about it? Am I allowed to talk about religion or politics? I mean, everyone gets awkward about that.
I think that's a weird American idiosyncrasy. This is still a society where, they measure like how personal space bubbles. And in this country, it's X big, and then in Britain, it's bigger, but then in Spain, it's smaller. It's the same with topics. For whatever reason, this is one of these weird, I shouldn't say weird societies, but it's a society where people seem to think that they're going to offend someone by saying something.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you just have to kind of live and let live. And the more people that do that and put down their offenses, then, the easier it's going to get for everyone to communicate.
Yeah, and I feel like for our show too, like I was asked in an interview recently that I did for SciCon, because my movie is going to be at that conference in Vegas in October, but they interviewed me and asked why Dan and I chose to talk not just about science and skepticism, but also about politics and atheism on our show, because according to them, a lot of skeptical podcasts don't really venture into religion and politics, but something that Dan and I kind of decided from the beginning is all these things are kind of connected. Like if you're critically thinking about GMOs and vaccines and all that kind of stuff, like expand your critical thinking to religion, politics, like all of that. It's not just, if you want to be a skeptic and critical thinker, don't just isolate it to one little area of like pseudoscience or something.
Yeah.
So when we set out to do the podcast, we kind of knew from the beginning, the Science Enthusiast Podcast, we named it because it's the offshoot of the page that Dan started a couple years ago, a Science Enthusiast. So that was the name of the show. But we, from the beginning, knew it was going to be this intersection of all of these topics because I think they just go together. Religion was the first pseudoscience, really, and when you think about it, this sort of thing that wasn't real and people latched onto.
Yeah.
And I think these divisions are everywhere. I mean, we see political divisions within atheism, right? That's obvious to everybody.
Yeah.
There's political divisions within sports now, whether or not you're standing for the anthem, ESPN's talking about it, people are bitching about it. Can't we just play the game? And I believe it or not, the furry community is also divided by politics, and they just want to get back to furry things.
Seriously. Wait, aren't there Nazi furries?
Yes, and then
is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and then they're bitching about the commie furries.
Not all of our listeners know what a furry is. You may have to.
A furry, I don't even know so much.
Is it bad that I know what it is?
Yeah, you like to play around with sexuality. I just jumped right in there,
like I know exactly what you're talking about.
Animal costumes and sexuality in some mix.
That was a very innocuous way of saying it. No one even understood it. People are banging in animal
I'm a very
costumes.
vanilla furry.
I don't know what that means. Let's move on.
He's a conservative furry, but not an alt-right furry. So
I'm a center-right, center-right conservative.
This is how rumors start. So,
but there was, believe it or not, I was able to link to pages. Sometimes when you take too many turns in the same direction on the internet, you get in a weird place, and that's where I was,
of course,
listening to people bitch about this, and I thought, oh my god! But who's gonna have the debate? The sports folks, the furries. I really think atheism is in a good the skeptic community is in a good position to actually do this in a meaningful way.
Probably,
yeah. So other people don't end up down the furry rabbit hole, like on the internet.
Or that they can do it too. Maybe we can. What I want to do is lead by example. And it's same way with recycling. Is our conference going to fix the world? No. But it's like recycling. My can doesn't count. Dimitri, your can doesn't count. Natalie, your can doesn't count. But our collective cans all count. So that's like the ethos.
Well, that's why I feel like as many people that are, making content, making podcasts, doing Facebook pages, doing whatever their part is to sort of spread the message of critical thinking, pay it forward, just keep going with it. I think that it's so crucial.
Yeah. And that we can do it in a respectable way, because our audience is going to be heterogeneous for sure as far as ideas. It's not going to be one-sided. We really expect a mix. That's good, because one side or the other you don't feel outnumbered, but you probably won't know who's sitting next to you where they hold their ideas. And the fact that we can talk about it, wow, kind of like that person, they seem to be on the other side of this. Maybe that can reduce demonization, because we have way too much of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of my favorite conversations that I've had, I think, on the podcast, but then that extended over into my, real life conversations, is with my friend Vance, who he works for Monsanto. He's their director of millennial engagement, which is the funniest job title ever. But awesome guy, kind of like lives at the intersection of agriculture and skeptics and all these different tribes of people, essentially. And we've had these great conversations about how important it is to reach out across your tribal lines, essentially, and make the personal connections before you just decide to write somebody off completely because, say, they're different from you in some regard. I mean, so for me, I'm very clearly an atheist, pretty liberal person. I let that identity kind of show in what I do. But I've made some fantastic connections with, say, Midwestern Christian farm people.
Yeah.
Because we have common interests in things like biotechnology. And I know that I can have, conversations about the common ground I share with them without needing to have a fight about the stuff we disagree with.
Yeah. I think it's easy for when you're on another side. If you're a person that's skeptical of social justice, it's easy to take also just social justice ideas and define them by the crazy extremes that are literally saying everything is racist, right? You can take a person who's a patriot and likes to sing the national anthem and can't imagine not taking his hat off and say, you're a white nationalist. There's a big difference between civic nationalism and white nationalism, and judging any patriot by people that are at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Yeah. Same with jihadis, right? Define all Muslims by the jihadis. I think it's okay to point the finger at all the extremists in all the respective categories and understand that there's lots of gray in between. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing. Aren't we sort of lacking in nuance these days?
Oh, yeah.
Because we very much have turned into everyone who doesn't agree with me is a Nazi.
Mm-hmm. Or,
I mean, that's it.
Yeah. Or the pejoratives on the left, right? That's there's so many.
I'm constantly battling. I mean, there is no nuance anymore. You're this, or it's labels.
Right.
It's easier to label someone than to talk and get to know them, because God forbid you're going to be tainted by their Nazism.
Yeah. Or the left, or whatever. You're just Antifa. You're just a global commie. Mm-hmm. You'll see that.
Right.
On the other side.
And it's like you have on the internet. It seems like you have to be one or the other, but most people aren't. And then I think that sort of dichotomy makes the people who are just sort of in the middle and figuring these things out, it makes them even more silent.
Yep.
Because you come out and ask a question, you're going to get shot down by probably people from both sides of things.
Well,
because you're not extreme one way or the other. And so then what good does that actually do?
Mm-hmm. It may move them into a more extremist camp. It may make someone who was right of center, slightly right of center, November 2016 was not going to vote in a certain direction because they thought that they were cornered.
Well, it drives people into a bubble.
Yeah.
I think if I can't approach the left or I can't approach the right, I'm going to retreat into farther and farther bubbles because I don't want the barbs coming from the other side. Do you remember, 4chan, right, is kind of like the popular place for the alt-right. Mm-hmm. But in 2004, Bill O'Reilly was bitching about 4chan for being the, people who are to the left of Lenin. Right. I mean, but think about what's going on then, right? You have 9/11. You have this extreme patriotism. You have, things that are worried about privacy laws are being pushed in the name of national security. Things on the left, it's hard to say. If you're actually an anarcho-communist, then it's not a good time to step up and say it. So you would retreat then into your bubble and hardly engage at all with the other side. Now, I think we're on the flip side. If you're center-right conservative, it's easy for you to get labeled a Nazi. I mean, there were people at the Boston rally holding up signs. These were the Nazis that holding up signs. Black lives do matter. Doesn't sound like much of a Nazi to me. The fact that you're driving people into bubbles. That's what's bad.
But the devil's the devil's argument there is why were they? Shouldn't they be not next to the Nazis?
Right. I know.
That type
There were some white nationalists mixed in there, but. We're losing nuance, and by not engaging with the other side in a meaningful way, we're driving both sides more and more into bubbles.
Well, at this point, I don't think you can even have any kind of conservative rally, period. You could be a fiscal conservative and you're going to be a Nazi.
Yeah,
I would say that's probably pretty accurate.
At least not in a public place. Yeah. Maybe at a private event you could, but try to do that at a state park.
Publicly,
you're going to be in trouble.
I don't even lean in that direction, but I think it's bad that we're stifling the voice of people who happen to have, a completely different set of beliefs. That's just not right.
Well, and that's why I like what you brought up though too about your conference and having people who disagree, either don't show up or show up and ask questions. Because then you can, advance the public discourse about these topics.
Right. And that we're not going to allow people to stand up and scream and yell, behavior. Everyone there is taking a pledge to come in with, be open-minded.
Yep.
Right. Honestly engage with the other side. And if you can do that, you can hold just about any position if you're going to, engage respectfully.
But worst case scenario, Brian is a bouncer. He's official. He has a license, and he will be tackling motherfuckers.
So that's the worst case scenario. Is
we're
do a little physical labor.
We're prepared.
And just take care of that.
Right.
He's been
then
lifting
they would
weights.
see me and then feel not threatened at all.
Yeah, he has Oakley sunglasses. He's ready to go. Yeah.
I feel really intimidated right now just listening to that description. So I think the conference attendees will keep themselves in line clearly.
Oh, of course. You own a pair of Oakleys, don't you, Brad?
I used to.
Of course. Yeah, you strike me as
this is silly. But yeah, we do intend to create an environment. And we've done this in our local group. We do have people that absolutely identify as social justice warriors. We have people that identify as social justice skeptics. Everybody in between. Some people that don't even know what social justice is. And we can debate and talk about this in a rational way, and that's we can bring that culture to the MythCon.
Speaking of social justice, Natalie, your channel introduced me to something called Social Justice is Important, but let's not lose our fucking minds. And I have been having a field day. I've now I'm a proud subscriber, not only your channel but theirs, and that one is just it was just giving me fits.
The internet is quite a place, and people do get offended by everything. Yes. And then it makes it tricky though, because there are things that we should be having discussions about, actual racism and misogyny and issues like that. But then it's taken to extremes, I think. And there are examples of that. Clearly, you see that exist.
I think it's mostly messaging. I think, my opinion, I'm very sympathetic to the notion of social justice, but I think they have a major league sales problem. That just the simple, if I would say, don't be closed-minded versus I encourage you to have an open mind. One comes off more positive than the other. And that they say, institutional racism. Our court system is institutionally racist. And let's say I happen to be in the court system. And I'm like, all right, you just called me a racist. Now, I'm immediately on the defensive. I'm probably not going to listen. I'm going to defend and give a counter argument rather than say, there are pockets of racism throughout the country, sometimes in the court system. And then I might be our court isn't like that, but I know others that are. That's the difference between getting somewhere and completely blocking off the other person saying, man, you're crazy.
Well, what did people do pre-internet?
Have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I feel like there's some good ideals in social justice, but they're being none of them are really grabbing traction if you go in the wrong way. There's a way to deal with campus rapes without, saying every guy's a potential rapist.
I'm just wondering what conceptually, what did people do pre-internet? Did people internalize their triggers, or no, not triggers? What are they? Microaggressions? Their emotions? If that was the case, if there was all internalization, wouldn't have we had a massive amount of suicides pre-internet age? Because people were so offended, so, internalized hate that they, how would they have had an outlet? But they didn't.
I have one answer. Before the internet, there's also the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union exists. You have the ideology of capitalism and communism. Right? That's holding everyone in America
an external
together.
Enemy? Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I think that's part of it. But it'd be interesting for an experiment to go throw Twitter and Facebook into 1960 and see what happens.
Or just throw it all away today and see what happens.
That's true.
What would we do?
But how are the furries going to find each other without the internet?
Well, see, it just goes back to that. But I was thinking about when I was in college. This was pre-Facebook. I would say maybe 2001, 2002. I think I was a freshman in college, and small liberal arts school. Something was happening on campus where a lot of racist and anti-Semitic and just, really not okay. Graffiti was being put up all over campus. Mm-hmm. And the school, small school did a day of like conversations about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. It was a problem that was existing on a pretty small campus, and we talked about it. It wasn't, Facebook pages kind of blowing up with whatever kind of comments of people making accusations against each other. It was just people talking.
And it was,
I know
fine.
that sounds so simple, but
we can't do that today. We
can't do that. Today. Why would we do that?
Why would we talk to each other? That's stupid.
Yeah. And the other thing, I don't like California's position on not letting state employees go to Texas and Alabama and Tennessee and a host of other cities.
I don't understand.
Because they disagree with some of their policies on transgenderism and
like as a business trip. I don't get
if you're a state employee. This is putting in doubt some college football games actually.
That's right. Mm-hmm. They will not travel to certain places because of
coaches, so certain employees wouldn't be able to go. You wouldn't be able to get the funding for it. So I don't like that.
Asinine.
That does. This doesn't help anything. Like if you're going to try to get Texas to modify their policy, there's a better way to do it than that. So I think this is hurting things, not helping.
The Californian golden curtain? What do we want to call that?
I don't know what we call it. There's so many things going on, but like little things. So if you're on the conservative side, you see that and you just say, they've completely lost it over there.
Well, that's going to push you farther.
Yeah,
that's not what we want. We want everyone to meet in the middle and be happy and play board games.
But even if you're on the left and you're like, God, Texas is they're crazy, man. They gotta catch up. Mm-hmm. There's a better way to do that than legislate. Well, our state employees can't do that. I mean, imagine if you've got a researcher that's at UCSF that's working with somebody in Austin, right? Now you're working on the cure for cancer, and I'm not allowed to take a flight and meet these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So then it's like figuring out, okay, so how do you fix the problem in Texas with Texas? Not necessarily how do you just keep the researcher in California unable to do their work. Mm-hmm. It seems counter to positive social change. And I think, or I would hope, that most people today believe in these fundamental social justice issues.
Yeah, I do.
And that would be that's probably an optimistic view of humanity, because people can be really terrible. But I hope that as a whole, the general concepts here are things that we can all try to grasp and figure out, like, because I think a lot of us do exist somewhere in the middle. Yeah. And I know that has been really painted as a negative thing right now, to be not, I guess for me, it's, if you're not left enough, that's really bad.
I think it goes back to what Brian was saying, where you need a visible enemy. You need a focal point, right? So maybe you had the Nazis, then you had the Viet Cong or something. No, you had the Soviets,
capitalists,
pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
Or you had, anti-black Jim Crow law supporting people. But the point is that you had some institutions that you could rail against. And now everything is kind of a little more homogenous. I mean, mostly people say that they're not racist, they're not, anti-gay, a lot of these things, except for the far right, or far religious right. So these young people who have a lot of energy, I include myself in the young people category. I don't want to be like those kids over there. All of these people need to put their energy somewhere. So they saw the massive movements of the civil rights in the 60s, or I should say in the 20th century. They want to be part of something bigger, and there just isn't anything. So they're inventing something that's not there. That's how I feel about this. And maybe I'll get flack over that, but that's what it seems like.
Well, and I guess it's hard. I guess it's hard to articulate, sort of, but for me, I guess in doing, this is kind of not talking about social justice stuff in particular, but what I'm trying to do with my, various projects, like my film, or even with our podcast, I feel like you want to fight for something good and for good ideas rather than necessarily against some enemy. Like I don't know.
Right.
I think
I like that. It just
does that kind of make some sense?
Absolutely.
I don't know exactly how to say it, but
because it sounds like a snowball rolling downhill as opposed to a war, right?
Yeah.
One is gaining steam. This could be a good thing. The other is, we're opposed.
Like be a movement for good rather than just wanting to burn everything to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, and it seems like, the extremes on both sides really do want to literally burn things down, right? I mean, It's Going Down is the name of Antifa's website, and the right, I've seen some of the alt-right pages. Like I rewinded Hillary's speech and went to some of those pages, and they will literally say that if white people are not a majority, that somehow we won't be able to steward Western-style liberal democracy. This is de facto racist. This is that is racist. Yep. Wow. I just couldn't believe that. I'm like, wow, it doesn't seem to matter what color. Culture matters, but color certainly doesn't. Wow.
Well,
yeah. So there needs to be something moving and mobilizing people towards trying to make this planet as good as possible, because I don't know, this is all we have, especially, atheists, we know this is all we have. There's nothing coming later. So let's not fuck it up completely.
If an asteroid was coming towards us, I think all of us would get together to do what we could to stop it.
A giant orgy? Oh.
No, the massive asteroid. Jonathan Haidt says this. We'd all get behind it. Like that giant.
That's where I went with your comment, but...
Okay. Say climate change sort of could be that asteroid, but then some deny it. The amount of debt, national debt we have, that could be an existential crisis. The fact that we have so many people in prison, that can be an existential crisis. There's certain, dare I sound like a conservative here, the breakup of the family. It can be an existential crisis.
How dare you?
Yeah.
You're racist.
You just go straight there. That's where you go. Yeah.
But right. We can, all those things I think should be bipartisan, and they can be if we kind of treat people with respect and talk nicely. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. So, if you guys listening want to join us, do so, because there's plenty of work to get done.
Plenty of work to be done. Plenty of events, such as the one coming up. And, Natalie, we love the fact that you put out amazing content out there. For those that haven't heard, I know you recently interviewed Michael Shermer, Armin Navabi, Jessica Blumke, is that it?
Yeah, Blumke Greif from Friendly Atheist, yep.
Yeah, so you've had a lot of, I would say, very interesting folks on your show. So those that haven't, please check out Natalie's podcast, The Science Enthusiast.
And let me throw in one more, The Romantic Nihilist.
You like that?
Yeah.
That's true.
So I just started that as like a sort of whatever, let me see, it's a social experiment, what would happen. People fucking followed that thing really quickly.
Can I give my favorite one?
Go ahead.
The meme, right? Which I used to think were just caption pictures, but now they're memes. Okay. But it's a picture of Salvador Dali's, like The Essence of Time, I think is what it's called. And it said, if I told you you had a beautiful space-time continuum, would you fold it against me?
Isn't that such a great internet find?
I loved that.
Yeah. I mean, and the only reason I just started that page on a whim is because these are the things that I have saved in the camera roll of my phone. Like if somebody ever found my phone, they would just think, who the hell is this person? I have ridiculous things saved on there. So,
but even the things you share on your on the Science Enthusiast one, I mean, what was obviously I love the the social justice one, but you had one on there that said, "What if the butterfly effect is real and all these fidget spinners caused the hurricanes?"
Oh God, Dan finds the most amazing things. Yeah, Dan, my co-host, is the brains behind A Science Enthusiast, and he is the master of memes and internet content, and I feel very fortunate to be his friend and creative partner.
Well, it looks like
human.
Dan is a fan of Rick and Morty, so I feel like he's a kindred spirit.
Oh, we are. Oh, do you know we did a whole episode on Rick and Morty and philosophy?
What?
Yeah, it'll be out really soon. We did it with our friends who do the Real Atheology podcast, and we just talked for an hour about Rick and Morty and philosophy. It was fantastic.
Oh, Brian, how have we not done this before? This is
Guys,
awesome.
get on this.
Well, I mean, you already have, so
it's fine.
So
you can do it. Do your own. There's so much to talk about.
There's so much nihilism.
Oh, it's brilliant. That show. I could talk about that forever, but you don't want to hear me do that.
No,
it's so good.
I would.
Dimitri will.
I would pay to hear that. Yes, absolutely, because I have equal feelings about that show, but. Lest our listeners not know what that is, shame on you. You should go out there and watch it. It's the best cartoon of all time.
Because if you don't watch Rick and Morty, you're a Nazi. So,
damn it, shit. I was just getting away from it.
That's a T-shirt right there.
That's it.
We created so many T-shirts this episode. Yeah. Well, Natalie, we thank you so much for creating these T-shirts with us.
Thank you guys for having me on your show.
And for being here and for being in a wonderful conversation partner. And we understand that you're not able to make it on the 30th, but we so wish you were coming so we could hang out.
I wish I was coming too. I know.
There is a live stream, so you can be there in spirit, and that it's for $5, which is pretty cheap. It's pretty cheap. Definitely check it out because you want to see if this social experiment works. There you go.
I do.
And who shows up. Exactly. And otherwise, we'll have other events. So we look forward to meeting you in person, Natalie. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Myth Informed. Myth Informed is brought to you by Mythicist Milwaukee. Producer Sean Frasick. Associate producers Fritz Blondone and Kristen Whitaker Hood. Engineer Josh Benishik. Technical consultant Jason Lawson, and hosts Brian, Dimitri, Jacob, and Joseph. Every week we produce a new podcast that sheds light on religion, secularism, and mythology. If you enjoy this show, please support us on Patreon at patreon.com/mythicist. Mythicist Milwaukee also brings major secular conferences and debates to the Milwaukee area, along with community events, both local and online. To support us in bringing future events, become a member at mythicistmilwaukee.com to receive member-only benefits. You can also visit mythicistmilwaukee.com and hit the donate button located at the bottom of each page to place a financial donation amount of your choice. And now, the closing theme, written and performed by Shelley Siegel.
wisdom and beauty, and Hades underneath. Isis of fertility, and ether of the Greeks. They all lie at rest, and who will be the next to die? You know they are all myths, and who will be the next to die? There was a time when everyone believed. Helios in the sun, Poseidon in the sea. Athena's wisdom and beauty, and Hades underneath. Isis of fertility, and ether of the Greeks. They all lie at rest, and who will be the next to die? You know they are all myths, and who will be